Canada has closed its border to all non-essential travelers, including migrants who by the tens of thousands have been crossing the border into Quebec seeking asylum. They have been banned from entering Canada at official border points, like this crossing in Lacolle under the Safe Third Country Agreement. But that agreement has an exception that has allowed migrants into Canada at non-official entry points, like this pathway at the end of Roxham Road in the town of Champlain, New York. But now Canada is blocking any entry, and that has left at least a few migrants in limbo. For now, if they cross on foot, they may be detained and turned over to the U.S. Border Patrol. Wendy Ayotte joins us now by phone. Wendy is a member of the group Bridges Not Borders, based just across the border in southern Quebec. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said given the coronavirus crisis, the border needed to be closed. Did this come as a surprise to you, or given the extraordinary times we're going through right now, were you expecting that the Prime Minister might take this step?
Yes, on Friday it was a surprise because in the 3 or 4 days previous, the Prime Minister and Minister Bill Blair, the minister responsible for public safety, had been repeating that Roxham Road would remain open, allowing people to seeking asylum here in Canada to enter into Canada through this irregular channel. So it was a very sudden announcement on Friday, and basically the Prime Minister gave people who might have been in transit or who were most definitely in transit towards Roxham Road only a 12-hour window during which they could enter into Canada in order to seek refuge here. So, yes, it was a surprise given that the government had been reiterating that it would remain open. And we were very surprised and dismayed at this announcement because, first of all, we're very concerned about all of the people in transit who will be stuck at some place, perhaps in the United States, with very little, if any, money left, nowhere to go. And all the closures of public transport, of hotels, of restaurants, and so on and so forth. We are very worried about what has happened to these people.
And nobody knows how many there could be. No one has
That's
any
correct.
guess what the number may be.
That's right. We have no way of knowing.
Your counterparts on the U.S. side of the border, Plattsburgh Cares, a group that does much the same that you folks do, they heard that at least one migrant had crossed the border, a woman from Cameroon, and that she was turned over to U.S. Border Patrol agents. Are you concerned, and I think you just mentioned this, are you concerned, though, that there could be more?
Yes, we're concerned there would be more, and we're trying to find out through our contacts with the RCMP, which is the Canadian Federal Police, whether other people have also presented themselves at Roxham Road and then, been brought by the RCMP to Lacolle, where they would then be turned over to the American authorities. And so far, we haven't really been able to find out anything more. So, of course, that's a matter of concern. We don't know what's going to happen to those people once they're returned back to the United States. Will they be detained? If they're in detention, will their potential exposure to COVID be much higher, given that detention conditions are crowded?
You folks have been assisting the migrants for 3 years now. Suddenly to be put in this position has to be frustrating for you folks.
It's deeply dismaying and, of course, frustrating. And I just want to mention that we don't refer to them as migrants. We refer to them as what they are, people who are seeking asylum in our country. But yes, for our whole group and our members, it is extremely disappointing. And I would add that we're not exactly assisting them. What we do when we go to Roxham Road is we greet people, we give out warm clothing, as does Plattsburgh Cares, give out water in the summer. We're there to provide a friendly face of welcome to people who are in a very harrowing situation and who normally when they get to Roxham Road, they're very, very frightened about the step that they're about to take. They're frightened of being arrested and all of the things that you can perhaps imagine, or that we actually may have difficulty imagining, because most of us here have never faced such a reality.
For the thousands who are in Canada and waiting for their asylum hearings, no doubt all of this has delayed that process. Many were already facing delays. of months, even years in some cases, for their asylum hearing. Does it seem all but certain now that this is going to delay that much longer?
Yes, most certainly, because all asylum hearings are now on hold, so nobody will be having their hearing before an IRB of what they're called a board member. None of those hearings are all on hold. I forget until which date at this moment. However, the delay, of course, in the hearings will cause a longer backlog to form in the whole procedure. So that's, of course, not desirable and will further extend a period of uncertainty for many people here who are anxious to have their asylum claims heard and resolved.
Is the concern after the coronavirus crisis lessens or even passes that the country of Canada may not lift these new restrictions and in essence may be shutting down the border to asylum seekers?
Yes, of course, that is a very serious concern. And given the government's abrupt about-face last week from saying, yes, it is remaining open, to no, we are closing it down with, as I said, only a 12-hour window, giving notice to people, it is a very big concern, not only for us, but for many, many other organizations in Canada concerned with refugee rights and refugee protection. And certainly we will be preparing for the future in terms of thinking about what will happen, once the border opens, and looking anxiously to see whether Roxham Road will be reopened. And of course, one of the major fears that we have right now in this moment that Roxham Road is closed, and in the future, if it were to remain closed, is simply that more people will start taking risks to cross into Canada. We've already seen the numbers of people who've nearly died from hypothermia, who've lost fingers and toes to frostbite. Certainly at least one person has died, if not more. Many have nearly died. It would appear obvious that will only increase. And then you have the actions of human traffickers who will, without any compunction, exploit people and perhaps, drop them off in unsafe places in order to cross over the border. So that's very high on our concerns, and right now and in the future. And secondly is the whole question of Canada's commitment to offering protection to people who come here at our borders seeking asylum. We've made a commitment through ratifying the 1951 Refugee Convention, through all of the legislation that we have passed to protect refugees. We've made a commitment that we will allow people to enter Canada and offer them protection while their asylum claims are being considered. So right now, basically what has happened is that, if you like, the fighting the pandemic has completely excluded those commitments, has overridden those commitments, and our feeling is that we can actually do both. We can be very rigorous and strict about fighting the pandemic here in Canada and keeping Canadians safe, and also upholding human rights. The government had announced a plan of putting people crossing at Roxham Road into a strict involuntary quarantine for 14 days, and that seemed like a very prudent and safe plan, but that has gone out the window.
With Greyhound bus service and Amtrak to Plattsburgh suspended for now, asylum seekers can still use Uber or find other ways to get to the border. Bridges Not Borders is trying desperately to get the word out to them that the border is closed.